Good afternoon and welcome to e-learning module created by Netaji Subhash Mahavidyalaya Holdibari, Coach Bihar. I am Samiul Azim, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Netaji Subhash Mahavidyalaya. Dear student, this is the second module I am creating on Alexander Pope. In the previous lecture, I discussed about Alexander Pope as a writer and his life. Today I will discuss about that particular incident based on which this famous poem has been composed. And at the same time I will discuss about mock heroic poem and how far the Rape of the Lock is a mock heroic poem. Dear student, in the previous class I mentioned two aristocratic family of then England, farmer family and Peter family. The member of Peter family, Baron Lord Peter, was in love with Arabella Farmer, and Arabella Farmer was also in love with Lord Peter. But in a ball, in a function, Lord Peter was present along with Arabella Farmer. And in order to please and give a surprise to Arabella Farmer, Lord Peter cut a lock from the head of Arabella Farmer and wore it in his ring finger. But this incident, instead of pleasing Arabella Farmer, offended her, and from that incident started family feud between two very good and aristocratic families. Under such circumstances, a good friend of Alexander Pope, Lord Carroll, approached Pope to write a poem so that the two families could be reconciled. And as a result of that, Alexander Pope took the assignment of composing a poem and finally wrote this poem, The Rape of the Lock. Now, I shall discuss about what is mock heroic poem and how far Rape of the Lock is a mock heroic poem. Heroic or epic poems, according to Maynard Mack, a very famous literary critic, are poems like the Odyssey, the Aeneid, and the Paradise Lost, which generally deal with man in his exalted aspect. Their action is weighty, their personages are dignified, and their style is elevated. What dire offense from an amorous causes spring? What mighty contest arise from the trivial things? I sing this verse to Carroll muse, is due. This even Belinda may vouchsafe to view. Slight is the subject, but not so the praise. If she inspire and he approves my lage. Dear students, mark this line. Slight is the subject, but not so the praise. Here, Alexander Pope wants to emphasize the fact that the subject matter of the poem is trivial, but the manner in which it has been presented or expressed is dignified. It is through these words that we understand that the beginnings is like that of most epics. Subsequent events of the poem parody the epic structure in the similar way. The opening invocation, the description of the heroine's toilet, the journey to Hampton Court, the game of Omber, magnified into a pieced battle, all lead up to the moment when the peer produces the fatal pair of seizures, but the action of the mortals was not enough. Pope knew that in true epics the affairs of men were aided or thwarted by the heavenly powers. He therefore added the bodies of the supernatural beings, sylphs, gnomes, nymphs, and salamander, as an agent in the story. The gods of the epic are heroic beings, but Pope's deities are tiny. Pope describes the diminutive gods of the poem as the light militia of the lower sky. Belinda screams like the Homeric poems and dashed like the character of the great epics. But she is mere a sleep of a girl. This is the ironic contrast. We find a battle drawn to combat like the Greek warriors, but it is only a game of cards on a dressing table. We find a supernatural being who threatens his inferior with torture, but it is a sylph, not a joke. The poem contains parodies of Homer, Virgil, Milton, as well as reminiscences of Catullus, Ovid, and the Bible. There are several instances of burlesque treatment. There is Belinda's voyage to Hampton Court, which suggests the voyage of Aeneas up to the Tiber in Virgil's Aeneid. There is Coffee Party, which is a parody of the meals frequently described in Homer. The combat at the end recalls the fighting which is found anywhere in the ancient epics. The Cave of Spleen is a parody of an allegorical picture, examples of which may be found in the poets like Spenser. Just before the cutting of the lock, when Ariel reaches out the closed recess of the virgin's thought, there he finds an earthly lover lurking in the heart, and Pope tells us that Ariel retires with a sigh, resigned to fate. This situation echoes the moment of Paradise Lost when, after the fall of Adam and Eve, the angels of God retire mute and sad to heaven. The angels could have protected Adam, even against Satan, but man's own free choice of will, they are as helpless as Ariel, and his comrades are in face of Belinda's free choice of earthly lover. An outstanding mock heroic in the poem is the comparison between arming of an epic hero and Belinda's dressing herself and using cosmetics in order to kill. Pope describes society lady in terms that would suit the arming of warrior like Achilles or Hector or Arjuna or Lord Rama. The Rape of the Lock is a poem ridiculing the fashionable world of Pope's day, but there are several occasions when we feel that epic world of Homer and Virgil in this poem have been scaled down wittily and affectionately to admit the coffee table and the fashionable lady's bedchamber. Supernatural machinery is considered another important element of mock heroic poem. In all epics, gods and demons, whether pagan or Christian, participate in the action side by side with the human agents. In an epic poem, as La Bossu had emphasized, the machine crowns the whole work. Pope therefore gives a mock dignity to the action of rape of the lock by the use of machinery of sylphs and gnomes, taken from Rosicrucian cult, which Bailey had described as the sect of Mountebank. The sylphs and the gnomes reduce the divine and the demonic agent of an epic poem to their diminutive status. Unlike the deities of the epics who act guardian agent of the epic heroes, Belinda's guardian sylph Ariel is ineffectual, airy being who deserts her at the most critical moment. The supernatural machinery of the poem thus provides a gentle mockery of the epic deities and increases the charm of the poem as a mock heroic. The epic style. Within this framework, the Rape of the Lock contains many allusions to Homer, Virgil, Milton, and several other epic writers. Ariel's description of the metamorphosis of the prudish woman into self, and I am quoting from Rape of the Lock, her joy in gilded chariot when alive, and love of Umber after death survive, is a direct parody of Aeneid in Dryden's translation, the love of horses which they had alive, and care of chariots after death survive. Though the subject matter of Rape of the Lock is trivial and ridiculous, the style, diction, and versification are rarely so. The diction is exalted throughout. The heroic couplets are carefully polished and chiseled, and the classical device of periphrasis is frequently resorted to. The very beginning line of Rape of the Lock, "What dire my liege could very well open a serious epic," at the end of Canto 2, on notices a similar elevation of style. What time would spare from still receives its dates and moments, like men submit to fate. Still could the labor of the gods destroy and strike to dust the imperial towers of Troy. The heroic style is the same that occurs in epic poetry. The mock heroic effect is produced by the context, which emphasizes that the invincible steel referred to here is the steel of the pair of scissors with which the baron cuts off Belinda's love. And Pope described here, and I am quoting from Rape of the Lock. But when to mischiefs mortals bend their will, how soon they find it instrument of ill. Just then Clarissa drew with tempting grace a two-edged weapon from her shining case. The use of periphrasis, two-edged weapon, glittering forex, and the fatal engine of for a tiny pair of scissors, collateral of the great with the little. A mock epic or mock heroic in Augustan sense of the term in itself is an example of the collation of the great with the little. In the Rape of the Lock, Pope frequently juxtaposes the heroic with the trivial to produce the mock epic effect. The very opening couplet juxtaposes mighty contest with the trivial things. Elsewhere, Pope achieves this effect by reducing the great to the level of the trivial. Whether the nymph shall break Diana's law, or some frail China's judge receive a flaw, or stain her honor, or hew brocade, forget her prayer, or miss a masquerade, or lose her heart, or a necklace at a ball, or whether heaven has doomed that shock must fall. In these three couplets, chastity is equated with frail China's jar, honor with new brocade, prayer with a masquerade, heart with a necklace. The effect of this collation is highly amusing and startling. The confusion of values which informs Belinda's world could not have been presented in a way better than this juxtaposition of the good with little. All these devices, at the conclusion of I can say, all these devices make the Rape of the Lock a highly subtle and complex mock heroic poem. Dryden's Macfleckno, which appeared earlier than Rape of the Lock, appears rather simple and straightforward when compared with Pope's poem. In the Rape of the Lock, however, satire is mixed with genuine charm which surrounds Belinda, and she is the central figure. Pope does not deny charm and glamour and the artificial world she presides over. In her Barge over Thames, she is genuinely fascinated and remains so in the rest of the poem. It is only when one notices that these brilliance and gaiety are at the expense of something much more important than they appear to be trivial and hollow. Belinda's description in the second canto is both genuine admiration for her beauty and charm and a mild criticism of her pride and coquetry. The Rape of the Lock is nearly perfect example of its genre of the mock epic, not only because it parodies the epic conventions and devices throughout the poem, but also because it provides highly amusing drama of its own right. The greatness of the poem is due to Pope's genuine as well as to the care and pains he took in a different form. The balance between the concealed irony and the assumed gravity is as nicely trimmed as the balance of power in Europe. The little is made great and the great is made little. You hardly know whether to love or weep. It is triumph of insignificance, of foppery and folly. It is the perfection of the mock heroic poem. And in this respect, Rape of the Lock is a great mock heroic poem. Thank you. Dear students, in the next module, I will talk about the important questions that might be asked in the forthcoming examinations, and I shall discuss about very short questions also. Till then, thank you and goodbye.